Attack on Titan Part 3, Part 1. Wait, no. Attack on Titan Season 4, Part 3, Part 1 is out. So I thought let's give a little how-to guide on how to draw EREN YEAGER from Season 4. That intro took way too long. Season 4, Part 3, Part 1. Just go. Let's start. Step 1 is all the guidelines that we need. This helps a lot with anatomy and getting all the proportions right. We start with a circle which makes up the main bulk of the skull, all of this kind of area here. And then we separate that with one line down the middle which extends off of the edge of the circle and goes down to where the chin is. Then we draw more of a horizontal line to show the eye line. This is like, I put it just below the center of the circle. And then we put in a line for where the nose goes, which is about halfway between the chin and the eyes. So you want to think of the circle more as a sphere as we're constructing the jawline, which kind of comes down from behind the circle and then comes back up from the chin to about halfway between where the eyes are and the back of the head. What I'm doing now is just adding in the neck, which is essentially just a tube which kind of curves back from the head towards the shoulders. Now we're just roughing in the shoulders. This is honestly probably the easiest part to do, pretty much just two curved lines. And also it's important to remember that the shoulder facing away from you is going to be shorter because of a thing called foreshortening, which I can't be bothered to explain right now, but essentially it's further away from you, it's smaller. Wait, that's perspective, isn't it? That's close enough. Right, now that we've got all of the guidelines set out, it's time to move on to step 2, which is roughing out the facial features. As you can see, I'm roughing out the eyes right here. This is essentially just two spheres in the head. I can't think of a better way to describe that. As you can see here, I'm adding a bit of like 3D geometry to the side of the head just to kind of illustrate that more. Also helps drawing the ear. So yeah, if you want to add that in, it might be a good idea. So going back to the eye, quick anatomy lesson here before we move on. The width of the eye should match the distance between the start of each eye. So it's quite easy to just kind of split this area into 3 and work out how big your eyes should be, because a lot of the time you either make your eyes a bit too big or too small. So you can see here I'm adding a second guideline just to make sure that the eyes are a similar height, because if they're not, it looks a little bit dodgy. Right, so now we're starting work on the ear. It's not too much of a difficult shape to get. Mostly you just need to focus on the outside. I like to draw my ears a bit more angular, but you know, a lot of the time, especially in like real life and stuff like that, they're a lot more curved. So keep that in mind depending on what your style is. And you essentially want to draw this 1, 2, 3, 4. This kind of pentagon shape. But if you're new to this, I'd recommend just sketching out a couple of times on a different piece of paper to make sure that you get the shape right. God damn, I'm talking quick. Right, so now we're moving on to the nose. As you can see right here, I'm mapping out a couple of planes to just kind of make sure that like I don't know what the word for it is, but just to make sure that it looks good. So you want to start with some kind of like circular diamond type shape, which makes up this area here on the nose. I don't know what the name for it is. For the rest of it, it's just a straight line. You can make it more curved inwards or outwards. If you want to play it safe, just keep it with a straight line and then kind of round it off at the edge. That's about all there is to it, really. Right, now we're doing the mouth. This is probably the most variable because it expresses a lot of emotion and stuff like that. So we're going for more of like a stern, almost angry look. So we want the mouth to be kind of curved down. And also remember, it's not going to be a straight line. The mouth kind of curves down a little bit in the middle where kind of the, you know, I don't know what I'm waffling so much right now. You know, if you are stuck on this part, of course, just look at some references in real life or look at what I'm doing here and try and copy that. Right, so now I'm going back to the eyes and adding in some eyelids. This is quite an annoying task, I must say. As you see a bit later on, I do end up getting this wrong and I have to go back and fix it. Now we're going in with details in the ear. There's really no way I can vocalize what I'm doing here, but just look at a reference if you're stuck at that, okay? Because I'm not explaining it. As you can see, I'm mapping out the hairline, which is I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a straight line, and then it curves down to around the ear. But when doing Eren's hair, it's quite easy. As he has it all tied back, there's not a huge amount of volume or texture that's in it, so, you know, it's quite easy to get that right. Now, actually, I do make another mistake here. I forget to add his little strands that he has down the front, and I do end up kind of ruining it because of that. So, just a little reminder if you're following along, add that in, as you do not want what happened to me to happen to you. Right, now step number 2 is complete. I guess I didn't sneeze there, fine. So step number 3 is the refined sketch. Now as you can see here, I'm already erasing all of the lines that I previously added in, but not enough so that you can't see them, just so that it's light enough. I also went in and roughed out some shading. I do end up changing the light source around a little bit, but if you want to keep it this way, then that's fine. The hay fever, man, is... it kills. It kills. And we're going in with some other details like the eye scars, and that's about all the other details I had to add. And now we're adding clothes. I'm going to call that step 4, we're adding in clothes, which is quite a simple part as we're just drawing like shoulders and up, so you only see the top of his the blue jacket, and then you've also got the shirt. Yeah, no, this is quite an easy step, I'd say. And now we move on to the big one, stage 5. We're going to be inking. Now, if you want to do this digitally, that's a pretty good idea. I might recommend doing that. But if you're doing traditional like I am here, then essentially, I'm going to describe what you're doing. I actually did this when I was recording, I think, so I'm going to shut up now. Now, this shouldn't take too long, as we've already got all the anatomy laid out, and we're just essentially tracing over this. However, it is the stage that you want to be the most careful with, as, you know, you can't really go back. But yeah, we're going to start off going over with a thinner fine liner. This is, if it focuses, it's a Micron 005, and essentially I'm going to start off with just going over everything here, because it's thin enough. I can go over in thicker lines for outlines and less detailed areas, whilst leaving areas which require a lot more detail like the scars and the eyes in a thinner line. Right, so we're back. I've gone over pretty much everything with the thin fine liner, and if you're paying attention, I did miss out the hair strands at the front, so I've had to try and work them in there, which goes to show the point that I just made, that you need to be careful with this and take your time. So now it's time to get rid of all of the pencil lines. So now I'm going to use the brush pen. Essentially, like, the range of thickness is just really variable, so it's quite good for outlines. So we're going to go over the whole outline with this and see how it ends up. thanks past me for that beautiful narration. Doing good at my voice. So moving on to colouring now. The optional step, you don't have to do this one. I'm doing this anyway. Now if you're wondering what colours that I'm using, I'm going to list them all on screen right now. I might not list them all on screen right now, but if they are there, then you can look them up and stuff like that. Right, so I start off with a base tone. I'd normally get... Wait, did I add highlights? I swear I added highlights before. So I start off with a lighter tone, do some highlights, and with the Attack on Titan style, there's usually quite a large white outline. I don't know if it's like fully white, but it's pretty light, so we're going to start off with doing that. And essentially just going around the areas where it would be brighter, where the light's hitting. Moving on, we have the base tone. Now, essentially what I'm doing here is just filling everything apart from areas that are actually highlighted. So this is just, because with alcohol markers, it's quite hard to go over darker areas with lighter colours, unless you want to use like paint or coloured pencils or something like that. So I'm just going in and filling out all of this now. Now I am using a chisel tip right now, which is a bit worse when it comes to getting the texture right. As you can see right there with all the skin, it's looking a little streaky right now. But what you want to do is, once you've gone over everything, just go over it again. That's pretty much what you can do. Now moving on to the eyes. I did smudge this a little bit. I don't know how. I think ink might have got on the pen nib, but it's alright. We can hide that later. Now I'm pretty much just going in with a lighter grey, moving on to slower and slower, darker. If you're doing this digitally, you can add a bit of like red in there and stuff like that. But I feel like that's a bit difficult to do when you don't have that exact colour. So you might think that this is getting a little bit dark, but actually, if you pay attention, you find out that the eyes are not actually always white. Now we're going in with Eren's beautiful green eyes.
Essentially I'm using every single colour of green that I own,
because I can't be able to take my time and go over this carefully. And now because I'm impatient, we're going in and adding some highlights. Just with a white pen, there's not a whole lot to it, just a dot, maybe a line, maybe another dot, you know, that's about it. Now I've started adding shadows. I might have wanted to do this earlier, but we're doing this now anyway. Essentially, just going over with the darker colour. Keep in mind where the light is, where the light's coming from, and where is not being hit by the light. Now we're going in and starting to add colour to the hair. As you can see right here, I do start with a highlight. It's an extremely light colour. And now we're switching to the base tone, which is a brown. The only brown colour that I actually own. But as you can see, we might want to change this a little bit, as in a couple of seconds you'll find out what happens. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. I don't think you see this correctly right now. Look at that. Am I upside? I'm not upside down, am I? Oh my god, we're about to run out of battery. I'm sorry, guys. Alright, boys, we back.
So as I was saying, look at that.
Where's Ginger? We got EREN Yeager right here. So as you can see here, I go on a separate piece of paper and I experiment with different colours to try and find out what makes the perfect brown for the hair. And none of them work hugely well, so I decided to go with a darker grey. Let's see how that goes. It's not as green as it looks right here. That's just the camera. So now I'm going over with the brown again to try and reinstate some of that colour, as I don't know if it's just with pro markers or with any other alcohol marker, but if you go over with like a grey or something, it takes all the kind of essence of the colour out of it. So that might be a thing to look out for. Or just do the grey first and that might work. So now we've got the hair done, we're moving on to the final part, which is the clothing. This shouldn't be too hard as there's only two colours, dark blue and like a tan kind of colour. So after doing a little bit of experimenting, I decide on my highlight colour, go over the outline of that with the blue, and then I move on to the navy. As you can see, this is a lot more saturated than it should be. So you know what we fixed that with?
A little bit of dark grey, you know?
And essentially it's the same for the other side, you know. I
Don't have to describe that to you.
And then what I'm going on to do here is with the black, I'm just adding in a couple more little details and creases. Now this does look a little bit better than it should because the black that I'm using is slowly running out. So it's not going to be as like opaque as if you used a fresh color. Now with the tan for his undershirt, I just used the skin color and then a light gray to kind of neutralize the saturation. Sounds like it makes sense. And we're done. EREN YEAGER is complete. Let me get him real quick. Look at him. He's looking crazy. Now, unfortunately, some things did go wrong, as you might be able to tell. You can still see the hairline there from where I forgot to, you know. And then also, I don't know how this happened, but I got loads of green all over the page, so I had to try and get rid of that the best I could. It still doesn't look great. It looks pretty bad, to be honest. But we roll with it. And I think this turned out pretty good, so let me know if you tried this. If you didn't try it, why did you watch this video? But if you did, tag me on Instagram so I can see how yours turned out. And that is literally everything that I have for you. See you sometime soon.